Welcome to Week 5's Let It Hatch. This video concerns Looking for Spinoza by Antonio Damasio, and it's very related to the video from 3 weeks ago concerning The Body Keeps the Score. In The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk has this to say about Antonio Damasio. In a series of brilliant scientific articles and books, Damasio clarified the relationship among body states, emotions, and survival. He has devoted his career to mapping out what is responsible for our experience of self. For the purposes of this video, this yellow marker just here is going to relate to what is responsible for our experience of self. Damasio starts by pointing out the deep divide between our sense of self and the sensory lives of our bodies. As he poetically explains, sometimes we use our minds not to discover facts, but to hide them. Highlighted with the pink marker pen here, you can see primordial feelings originate at the level of the brainstem, which we've related to this pink highlighter in the past, rather than the cerebral cortex with the blue color coding. Today, our focus on these primordial feelings through Damasio will lead us back to the body-brain connection, which was our starting point in the video on The Body Keeps the Score. Once again, we'll think about the expression of emotions in man and animals, recognizing that the fundamental purpose of emotions is to initiate movement that will restore the organism to safety and physical equilibrium. The brainstem is relevant here, so is the amygdala. The amygdala is the brain's smoke alarm, as opposed to the watchtower, the prefrontal cortex, as opposed to the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which we've related to planning. When the self-styled good frog is making his list of good and bad habits so that he can cultivate the former and eradicate, uproot the latter, there's lots of dorsolateral prefrontal cortex planning activity going on. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex tells us how our present experience relates to the past. You could think of it as the timekeeper of the brain. So very relevant when we're following this advice. Suffice to say, we won't be using this green marker for a bit. The amygdala, you'll remember, is the smoke detector in the limbic unconscious brain. Its central function, according to Bessel, is to identify whether incoming input is relevant for our survival. This understanding of the amygdala is very relevant for today. Relates to the triggering of emotion. Here it is again. For Damasio, the amygdala is one of a number of brain structures that will become active when they detect a certain configuration. Note the same detector metaphor, but it's more subtle here. Detect is in quotation marks to create some distance. This initiates signals towards other brain regions, thus giving rise to a cascade of events that will become an emotion. He uses a virus metaphor. This is like when a virus enters the bloodstream and leads to an immune response. For the most part, Damasio is avoiding metaphor. The amygdala is just the amygdala. One of the things that the amygdala does is detect emotionally competent stimuli that are relevant to my survival. Now, speaking of metaphors, this week we've been thinking of this table as the war table, an acronym for We Are Right. And I've been stressing yesterday that we want to be on guard against making being at the war table wrong. As we've seen, this week John has been planting hedges. He wasn't doing so randomly. Part of the function of what we can see just here is to protect the new wildflower meadow from deer. If you check out last Monday's video, you'll see John creating this structure, which has a dual purpose, he claimed. It's land art, which serves to protect those saplings, again, from deer. Next week, beyond that gate in the distance, we'll encounter John creating a woodland. Once again artfully, once again according to a plan. Coming into the field right now, we have another John, Farmer John, who's given me diaries. Much more on that in weeks to come. Let's now turn this camera around and actually bring it over here. And as promised, my assistant Stymie is going to help me demonstrate something. As we know, This structure serves a dual purpose. It wouldn't be here if these chutes were not in need of being protected from the bad guys for this week, the deer. So let's imagine that John has recently constructed this beautiful multi-purpose structure. And now he's sitting over here at his war table. And he's got his green pen. And what's good? Plant growth. What's bad? Deer. So he's sat here at this war table and he's put lots of effort into creating that structure to protect the saplings from the deer. Let's imagine John is now at this table making a plan to construct that hedge. The growth of that new hedge needs to happen in a very particular way. It's to serve as an unnatural, artificial partition, protecting the wildflower seeds from the deer. John suddenly has a sense that something is not right. He can hear something, and it's not the tractor, it's deer. Now let's turn back to Antonio Damasio and the amygdala. He references the amygdala's ability to detect emotionally competent stimuli non-consciously. They're detected very fast, ahead of selective attention. John's initial awareness of the threat to his plan could be because of the amygdala. So this diagram here of levels of automated homeostatic regulation from simple to complex is very important. Once more complex regulation is going on, in the form of emotions proper, for example, this kind of activity is much less likely to be causing the smoke detector to be going off. For Damasio, though, there's a nesting principle at play. Each of the different regulatory reactions we've been considering is not a radically different process. They are all aimed at the same overall goal: survival with well-being. So we don't find Damasio referring to the prefrontal cortex, say, as a watchtower, or even the amygdala as a smoke detector. Think about a smoke detector. The amygdala is like a smoke detector insofar as it detects when this kind of activity is occurring, when there's a potential threat to survival or well-being. But it's not like a smoke detector in various other respects. Some things that are true about this smoke detector that are not true about the amygdala are that it was produced according to a plan in a factory, that it has been installed by a human, and that it could be uninstalled and replaced if it's malfunctioning or not serving its original purpose. The one point of comparison with the amygdala is that it detects threats. The goal of the homeostasis endeavor, whether we're talking about smoke detectors or watchtowers or whatever, is to provide what we as thinking and affluent creatures identify as wellness and well-being. 3 stages to the process, he claims. Number 1, something changes. Number 2, the changes have the potential to alter the course of the life of the organism. Number 3, the organism detects the change and acts accordingly. All reactions operate under this arrangement and are thus a means to appraise the internal and external circumstances of an organism and act accordingly. Damasio is interested in the relationship between different aspects of automated homeostatic regulation. The image for the ensemble of these reactions is not that of a simple linear hierarchy. That is why the metaphor of a tall building with many floors only captures some of the biological reality. A better image is that of a tree. A better image is that of a tall, messy tree with progressively higher and more elaborate branches. And this is where feelings come in. Feelings, the treetops of life regulation. If we're willing to rely more on the homeostatic wonders that are our feelings, we might be able to do without the war table. Which, it just so happens, I've been invited to move for the winter. Lots more Spinoza and Damasio to come. On the immediate horizon, next week, we venture into the woodland. The following week, Lynn pays us a visit and shares 2 poems in a week called Magic and Metamorphosis. After that, I journey downhill to the English Channel in a week called Channels. And before Christmas, Farmer John, not to be confused with my dad, will come into the field and give me an interesting commission. All the time we'll be exploring new resources, including, in the next 3 weeks, The Artist's Way, Big Magic, The Wisdom of Insecurity, and beyond that, certainly more Damasio, Bessel van der Kolk, and Spinoza. As we proceed, we'll endeavour to remain away from the war table, and ideally, to meet in the field.